Welcome to the deep dive. For decades, the startup world, well, it often felt like a graveyard of good intentions, didn't it? And just wasted resources. Millions poured into products nobody really wanted, built on assumptions, not actual evidence. But what if there was a better way? A repeatable, almost scientific way to build what people truly desire? Minimizing waste and maximizing impact. Well, today, we're unlocking that secret. Our main source, our compass for this deep dive, is Eric Ries' really seminal work, The Lean Startup. And our mission today isn't just about defining terms, it's more to unpack the core principles of this, well, groundbreaking methodology, helping you grasp how it empowers rapid iteration and really customer-centric development, allowing businesses to truly build what people want, without wasting all that precious time or money. So at its heart, Ries argues that the fundamental activity of any startup is, well, surprisingly simple. It's turning ideas into products, measuring how customers respond, and then learning whether to pivot or persevere. But this isn't really a straight line, is it? It's an iterative, kind of continuous feedback loop he calls build, measure, learn.
Yeah,
You rapidly build a minimum viable product, an MVP, we'll get more into that. Then you measure how customers interact with it, collecting data. And finally, you learn by analyzing that data, validating or maybe invalidating your initial hypotheses. It's this relentless cycle, right? Constant improvement, designed to minimize waste and adapt effectively to what the market actually needs.
exactly. And that learn part of the loop, that's where validated learning really um, comes alive. What's so profoundly transformative about this whole approach is that it brings a kind of scientific rigor to entrepreneurship, something often missing before. The main goal, the overarching goal, is to figure out the right thing to build, what customers genuinely want, and crucially, what they'll pay for, and to do it as quickly as humanly possible. So this process, it replaces those often dangerous assumptions with, well, facts, hard evidence, guiding strategic decisions based on what you actually see in the market. It really demands that you formulate clear, testable hypotheses about your business. And then you have to design experiments, real experiments, to put those hypotheses to the test, rather than just, building in a vacuum based on a plan. It's all about learning from reality.
Okay, so if validated learning is like the scientific method for startups, then a key tool for actually doing that science is something you've probably heard of, the MVP, the minimum viable product. But, and this seems crucial from Rees, it's not just a strict down product, right? It's something more specific. He calls it that version of a new product, which allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. So the genius isn't just shipping fast, it's about challenging your biggest, riskiest assumptions with like minimal investment, preventing months, maybe even years of wasted effort building something nobody actually wants in the end. It's easy to say build an MVP, but what does that actually look like, in the messy reality of a startup? Rees gives some pretty clever examples for getting that initial learning. Can you maybe walk us through a few of those and sort of the thinking behind them?
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of these different MVP strategies is really that they allow you to test demand and your core assumptions before you go and build out a full, often complex system. So take the concierge MVP, for instance. That's where you're basically manually delivering the service to maybe just a small group of early customers. The genius there is you're learning directly from that personal interaction. You really understand their true pain points, and you're validating the service itself, not necessarily the complex technology behind it yet. Then there's the Wizard of Oz MVP, which sounds kind of fun. Here, you simulate automated processes, but it's actually humans behind the curtain pulling the levers. This lets you test the user experience and the value proposition as if it were fully automated, but without writing, a single line of complex code initially. And we also have things like the landing page MVP. It's pretty common now. That's really all about testing market interest, maybe just with a product description page, maybe an email sign-up form. It measures genuine customer curiosity, right? Are people even interested? And the video MVP, just demonstrating your product concept through a video, like Dropbox famously did. Both of those are fantastic for validating market interest and your messaging, often way before any real product even exists. The common thread you see. It's all about learning and de-risking. It's not about perfection at this stage.
Okay, that makes sense. So once you've built something, even just one of these clever MVPs, and you've measured the customer response, you hit this fork in the road. Pivot or persevere? Now, it sounds simple, but I imagine for founders, especially after pouring so much into an idea, admitting you need to pivot, well, that must feel like a huge emotional hurdle, maybe even like failure. How does the lean startup approach kind of reframe that decision?
That's a really critical point. And yes, the emotional side is very real. But Rice reframes a pivot not as failure at all, but as a structured course correction designed to test a new fundamental hypothesis about the product, strategy, and engine of growth. It's really about embracing strategic flexibility based on the data, based on customer feedback. It's actually a hallmark of agile leadership, right? A sign that you're learning and adapting, not just stubbornly clinging to a vision that maybe the market doesn't support. The emotional hurdle is definitely there, but the lean approach gives you a framework, a process for making that tough decision based on evidence, not just gut feeling or ego. It lets you say, okay, our original hypothesis seems wrong, but here's what the data is suggesting we should try next. It's learning in action. And it's not just one kind of pivot either. Ries actually categorizes several distinct types of strategic shifts. For example, you might do a zoom-in pivot. That's where maybe one single feature of your product turns out to be the main thing people love, so it becomes the entire product.
Ah, okay. Focusing the nickel feature.
Exactly. Or conversely, a zoom-out pivot, where maybe your whole initial product becomes just one feature of something much larger. You realize your solution's just a piece of a bigger puzzle.
Right.
There's also the customer segment pivot. Pretty straightforward. You target a completely different set of customers because your initial audience just isn't biting, or you found a better fit elsewhere. Another important one is the platform pivot. So maybe switching from being a direct application to becoming a platform that others can build on, or the other way around. And finally, a business architecture pivot. This is about changing your fundamental business model, maybe going from high margin, low volume to low margin, high volume, or vice versa, like changing from complex enterprise sales to a freemium model, perhaps. Each pivot fundamentally is just a new scientific experiment. It's built on the learning you gained from the last one.
This all sounds incredibly agile, you're right. Moving at, well, breakneck speed sometimes. But how do startups actually measure progress in this kind of fast-paced, iterative environment? Especially when, traditional metrics like revenue might be zero for a while or just plain misleading early on. That's where innovation accounting comes in, right? It almost sounds like a contradiction in terms accounting for innovation. How does that work?
It does sound a bit paradoxical, doesn't it? But that's sort of the genius of it. Innovation accounting allows startups, as Ree puts it, to prove objectively that they are learning how to grow a sustainable business. It's a direct challenge to what he calls vanity metrics, those numbers that look good on a chart, maybe impress investors superficially, but don't actually tell you anything actionable about your business or true customer behavior. Thing like total registered users versus active users.
Right, the feel-good numbers that don't equate to progress.
Exactly. Instead, innovation accounting focuses relentlessly on actionable metrics, the ones you can actually influence through your experiments, the ones tied to your core business hypotheses. It uses specific learning milestones like, did we validate this key assumption, to gauge real progress? And it relies heavily on things like cohort analysis. So looking at how different groups of customers who signed up at different times behave over time. Are newer cohorts engaging more? Are they sticking around longer? This really helps avoid that dangerous trap of mistaking sheer activity for actual meaningful progress toward a sustainable business.
Okay, so innovation accounting gives us this disciplined way to measure the learning and the progress. But how does that discipline then translate into the actual day-to-day process of building and shipping products? That's where I imagine concepts like small batches come into play. Seems connected.
Absolutely connected. Innovation accounting tells you what to measure, and small batches really dictates how you deliver value and run experiments to affect those measurements. Working in small batches allows for much, much faster iteration and learning. Just think about it using a physical analogy. If you're building cars, say, one small batch at a time instead of huge assembly lines, well, you find quality problems almost immediately, right?
Yeah, you're not producing hundreds of flawed cars before noticing.
Precisely. Applied to software or any product development, it helps you identify and fix issues much earlier in the process. It drastically reduces the amount of work in progress, inventory, unfinished features, untested code. And most importantly, it significantly accelerates those feedback loops we talked about. Build a small thing, measure it, learn from it fast. It fundamentally reduces the risk of these huge catastrophic failures when you finally launch something massive. And it just vastly improves a company's ability to adapt quickly to changing customer needs or market realities. It boosts productivity, too, counterintuitively to some.
And what's really powerful here, if I'm understanding this right, is how taking small batches to its extreme leads to continuous deployment, which directly shrinks that feedback loop almost to zero, allowing for near immediate validation or invalidation of ideas. That must be a massive cultural and technical shift from traditional development cycles.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, continuous deployment essentially means you're automatically releasing code changes or product updates into production as soon as they're ready and pass automated tests. You're effectively shrinking the batch size of work down to maybe a single feature or even a single code commit.
Wow.
This massively reduces the time lag between having an idea, building it, and getting real customer feedback on it. Hours or days, maybe, instead of weeks or months.
Mm.
It also dramatically minimizes the risk associated with those big, infrequent, high-stakes releases that used to be the norm. You know, the ones where everyone holds their breath hoping nothing breaks.
Yeah, the weekend release horror stories.
Exactly. With continuous deployment, if a small change causes a problem, it's usually easier to detect and fix or roll back quickly.
Mm.
And fundamentally, it fosters this ingrained culture of experimentation and learning. Every small change becomes a mini experiment you can track.
And I guess to make that even possible, you need some specific technical foundations in place, right? It's not just flicking a switch. Things like really robust automated testing to ensure code quality automatically.
Absolutely critical.
And maybe feature flags, so you can turn features on or off for specific users without redeploying everything.
Yes, feature flags are key for controlled rollouts and A/B testing.
And then strong monitoring systems to catch any problems really fast after deployment.
You need all of those pieces working together smoothly to make continuous deployment safe and effective. Now, when problems inevitably do arise in this kind of fast-paced environment, and they always will, no system's perfect. Another lean tool comes in handy, the 5 whys. It sounds incredibly simple, but it's a surprisingly powerful technique for getting to the actual root cause of a problem. It involves just repeatedly asking why. Typically, yeah, about 5 times, to dig deeper past the immediate symptoms and uncover the underlying systemic issues. What's often challenging here, though, is actually doing it rigorously, resisting the urge to stop at the first most obvious answer, or maybe worse, to blame an individual.
Right, finding a scapegoat instead of a process flaw.
Exactly. The goal isn't finding fault, it's finding the systemic breakdown in the process or the system that allowed the issue to occur in the first place. So to implement it, you basically assemble a team, usually people connected to the problem area. You clearly define the problem statement first, what actually happened. Then you ask why it occurred, document the answer, and for that answer you ask why again and again. Keep peeling back the layers. You continue until you reach what feels like the true root cause, something actionable you can address. And then you develop and implement countermeasures, specifically designed to prevent that root cause from causing the problem again. It pushes you to really understand, not just react and patch.
Okay, so if we kind of pull all these threads together now, the build, measure, learn loop, validated learning, MVPs, pivots, innovation accounting, small batches, continuous deployment, the 5 whys. Wow, it's a lot. What's the ultimate takeaway here? It really sounds like all these principles and tools converge on one core idea, adapting to customer needs. But how hard is it, really, for established companies maybe, or even for new startups run by smart people to truly hear and then adapt to what customers want? Not just what customers say they want, because that can be misleading too, right? Or what the startup founders think they should want.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult. It's probably one of the hardest things in business, actually.
Mm.
It requires a really fundamental shift in mindset, moving away from just building what you can build or what you want to build towards obsessively focusing on building what customers need and will value. Success in this lean model isn't just about efficient production. It's about deep, empathetic learning about your customer and market. And this adaptation involves using several different strategies, often in combination. There's customer development, which Steve Blank pioneered systematically getting out of the building, engaging with potential customers early and often to validate or invalidate your core business hypotheses before you build too much. There's also Genchi Genbutsu, which is a principle from the Toyota production system, part of lean manufacturing. It literally means go and see for yourself.
Go to the source.
Exactly. Go to the actual place, the gemba, where the customer is experiencing the problem or where they'd use your product. Observe them firsthand, without bias. You learn things you'd never get from a survey. We also use tools like A/B testing, of course. Scientifically comparing different versions of a product, a feature, a headline, whatever, seeing which one performs better based on actual measured user behavior, not opinions.
Data-driven decisions.
Precisely. And underpinning much of this is robust user experience, UX research. Really studying how users interact with your product, finding friction points, identifying areas for improvement, and sometimes uncovering those latent needs customers can't even articulate themselves. All these methods really are designed to move you away from assumption and gut feeling towards actual evidence from the real world. So if we connect all these principles back to the bigger picture, build, measure, learn, validated learning, MVPs, pivoting smartly, innovation accounting, small batches, continuous deployment, 5 whys for problems, and this relentless customer adaptation. They're all really about applying scientific rigor, empirical testing, to the inherently uncertain, often chaotic world of entrepreneurship and innovation. Ries states it very directly in the book. The ability to learn faster from customers is the essential competitive advantage that startups must possess. It's not just about building a product anymore, it's about building a learning organization. An organization that can consistently outlearn and therefore outadapt any competitor in the marketplace. That's the sustainable advantage.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Maybe take a second to consider how these principles, things like rapid iteration, validated learning, constantly adapting based on feedback, how they don't just apply to tech startups in Silicon Valley. They could fundamentally change how you approach any project, any new idea you have, maybe even a personal goal you're working towards. If you're tackling something uncertain, something new, ask yourself, are you trying to build the entire perfect thing out before getting any real feedback? Are you truly building what people, your customers, your audience, whoever actually want? Or are you mostly building what you think they want based on your own assumptions? Just ponder this. How might embracing even a little bit of this build, measure, learn mindset transform your own endeavors? By forcing you to challenge your riskiest assumptions early and learn directly from reality, not just from your meticulously crafted plans.